Hi, welcome to Bull Squash. Now we're getting to do the recap of the Gouna 2021. So that was finished up day before yesterday. Basically had a bit of a busy schedule yesterday, so tried to get the video out sooner, but unfortunately wasn't able to. But was able to get through some notes, and I think first off it was a pretty good tournament. I would say overall, I was probably less than thrilled with the quality that I saw. I don't want to be overly offensive to any of the players or anything within the tournament, but I did find that there wasn't really any really truly compelling matches, minus maybe Hania versus Sherbini. But even at the end, it seemed like it was more split between games where Sherbini was dominant and Hel Hamami was trying to play catch-up, and the third and fourth game where Hamami was able to outpace Sherbini, and then the last game, Sherbini just took over. So overall, I was actually a little bit less than thrilled with the quality of the matches, and I'm definitely not including Asal versus Dasuki. I thought that match was a mess. That mess was a mess. But overall, there was a few thoughts I had on the match just to discuss, and it's going to be an interesting end of year. I don't necessarily know what the next tournament game is supposed to be. Manchester. I think we're going into the World Championships and then to World Series Finals, but I'll have to double check the calendar. But anyway, so my first note, Todd Harrity. This was actually interesting. So I didn't know he had been consecutively in Egypt for the last 6 months. I knew he had been spending extra time there, but I also didn't know he was working with Haitham Mefat, who was also Ali Farig's coach. So one of the things that I really noticed in his match against George Parker was he changed his movement. His movement is now like Ali Farig's. That's amazing. I didn't know that you could actually learn how to move like Ali Farig. Now, Todd is decently tall, not super tall, but I think he's probably 6 feet, close to the same height as Ali. Thin guy, not too heavy, so pretty much can do that. And the way I would describe that movement is I would almost call it walking to the tee. So specifically, what he would do is his recovery off his shots, rather than get back to the tee and use a split step to advance to the next ball. Rather, what he does and what Ali Farig does very well is he actually moves slower back to the tee, recovering, and what that allows him to do is gives him a bit of momentum already, so he doesn't need to necessarily do a split step. And if he anticipates, he can actually already be moving towards the areas where he anticipates the ball was going. I saw a lot in that match where George Parker was in the front left corner, and he would try to go for a straight drive back, which most taller players, that's the preferred option because they don't want to get into various cross courts and get into high risk areas of the court, so they tend to go back to straight length. And Todd was just constantly anticipating that shot and was getting onto balls that I was pretty surprised by, and just putting a lot of pressure on George Parker to increase the pace and be more accurate. So I was really impressed. I hadn't seen much of his match against his third round match where he lost. I'm trying to remember who beat him. I actually have just look at my spreadsheet right away. But it was against Baptiste Mazzotti. So I wasn't sure exactly how Baptiste would have beaten him, because he's so aggressive that maybe it was, he had seen the match and just knew to increase the pace a bit more. I think George Parker didn't do a good enough job of recognizing that Harrity was on top of him a lot more and didn't try to mix it up enough, which Baptiste does. So I was overall impressed by Todd Harrity. He's made some stellar improvements. We'll see where he goes from here. I think that the next step would be he still needs to be able to absorb a bit of a heavier attacking game, but for someone who's been on the tour for so long, I've seen a lot of his matches. This is the first. I feel like this is almost his biggest win, at least in terms of quality improvement. But along with that, I did find George Parker to me is still an extremely talented player, but his mental game is a little weak. You definitely see with a guy like him, and you see it with a few players actually, like Farida Muhammad, Rowan El-Arabi, the lack of having on-court coaching or between-game coaching, I should say, is hurting certain players, and especially younger players who are trying to make their way up the tour. And I feel like that would really assist a guy like him, where he can probably get stuck in his own head, get frustrated, and ultimately angry at himself and at the whole world. Where simple strategies or simple changes could help, but you don't get that communication in between games anymore. So that would be one example where I really think that once we're out of the pandemic situation, whenever that is, he can get a little bit better by getting that little bit of that voice in between games that's not his own head. I guess in general, I was actually really happy with the way I predicted. I think everything up until the final. So the women's final, I got right. I got all the quarters except with Joelle King losing out to Rowan El-Arabi. I was really impressed, actually. And then, obviously, the men's final. So, hey, sometimes I get them, sometimes I don't. But, hey, I just want to pat myself on the back. Pat. So Rowan El-Arabi, again, another younger player who, just mentioned, had a much stronger tournament. In her match against Gohar, she was still looking a little bit... She keeps her emotions too inward. I think that it almost looks like she's about to cry when she gets frustrated, especially with when she thinks there's blocking. But really, she has gotten her aggressive game back a little bit more. The big thing I would love to see her do, and this will require an off season, mind you, is she needs to get her core strength up. That I don't know. It's a bit of core. It's a bit of her legs, but her biggest issue right now, she is not stable in a lunge, and when the ball goes up high, she just loses that little touch of stability. Balls that are closer to her that she retrieves a little more easily, she can do wonders with, but once it gets into extremes or when she gets into a volley situation, it's very difficult for her to hold it, and it makes it obvious when she's going for a volley drop. She tends to fall into the shot and makes the volley straight drive option or any length option basically null and void because she's just committed to the drop. It's a little too obvious, but I'm really hoping that's one area where she improves for the next season. So the humidity issues now. I understand that you want to keep your matches on the glass court. You also want to make sure that you keep fans happy. That going to the side courts is going to be an issue. However, I really think that PSA did a bad job of not recognizing fast enough to move certain matches to the side courts. They just decided to wait, and it is tough. Like, you don't necessarily know how fast it's going to take. They were turning on fans in front of the court in order to anticipate the humidity as fast as they could. But they should have acted a little bit faster to get the Sherbagi match going on the side court, and then they should have been able to just put have one of the women's matches on the side court as well, or I'm not exactly sure what you were going to do with the Dasuki Asal match, but finishing close to 1 a.m. on a match is not fair to either of those players, whoever was going to win, because people will say, oh, you know what, win or lose, the next day, there's no excuses. You go out there, play, and you play your best. I felt Dasuki did have a bit of a strong disadvantage. I think Sherbagi would have finished his match a lot earlier, but I'm not sure. I mean, I'd have to talk to an actual professional player and see what their opinion is on, and get a technical explanation about how late you can stay up. But you finish a match close to 1 a.m. You don't necessarily get back to your hotel room till at least 1:15 because you're doing interviews, you're cleaning up your stuff, whatever, stretching. So you get back to your hotel room, shower, cold shower, obviously, because for Dasuki, it was a 5-gamer. He's probably just muscles burning, especially against Asal. You're probably not even sleeping till 3, 4 a.m. And you just have to unwind. I've had hard matches where I finished at 10 o'clock. There was no way I was going to be, actually sleeping until at least between midnight and 1 in that scenario. So I think they did a big disservice to their semifinal in that case. Dasuki didn't do too badly. Like, he came out, he was looking kind of lethargic. I don't think he was playing at the pace he would like to. His game is actually pretty well matched against Muhammad, but just couldn't really get into it until the third. And he gave one really good game, but unfortunately that was it. And it is again an unfortunate situation. It's what happens when you do outdoor courts. These risks happen. We've had rain. We've had bugs. Although I don't think a match has been stopped by that, but or excessive heat or dust. I mean, there's lots of different ways that putting an outdoor court can go very badly. So, I'm not a big fan of that. But you move on. The other thing that really frustrated me was on the men's side. This didn't really happen much to the women. I think there's an explanation why, but with the men's matches on the glass court, you've definitely found a lot more interference. And because of the hot conditions, you saw that the ball was a lot hotter. Players just couldn't put it away very easily, with the exception of Sherbagi in his final, which was very impressive. But the ball was really bouncy. Drives that you think would be short kills seem to just go mid-court really easily. And I understand that you have to be able to adjust to the court, but what it also did was it meant that you rarely, at least in the men's part of it, had outright winners, and it was really difficult to judge whether or not a player could retrieve a ball in let scenarios. So I think that was a major reason why you saw a lot more interference in the on the glass court matches. It doesn't happen as much with the women just because there's a little bit more. It seems, well, I would agree with some of the commentators that some of the women do take avoiding having to go to the ref and trying to play the ball more. It does happen with some specific players, but when you hit a decent shot, that's it's easier to find an outright winner. But in the men's game, it's a lot more difficult, and I just found that with those kind of conditions, it was really difficult to make those calls. I felt for the refs, and again, this goes back to some of my previous comments in my last video about the difficulties refs have. I want to go into more depth later, but this kind of tournament really exemplified that refereeing can be very inconsistent, and it's not even necessarily the referee's fault. It is a very difficult job. So Asal, and sort of going into that though, one of the problems I have. So Asal, don't get me wrong, I don't think he necessarily played very cleanly in his match against Dasuki, but it's kind of ironic because Dasuki had the same treatment, and the treatment I'm describing is where you're kind of a young player, very aggressive, very maybe calls too many lets, and it's fair, or is perceived to be interfering a lot, blocking, whatnot, but I just find that Asal just doesn't get the benefit of the doubt very much, and it almost feels like the referees are trying to be teaching and punitive with their lets and no lets. So a let that they would give, say, an established player, your Sherbagis, your Paul Coles, whatever, a let that you would generally give to them, you're not going to give to him. You can call more no lets, and you might even call more strokes off of his movement, simply because they think that they're teaching him to move around and try to clear better, and even though his movement may not be any different than those in a lot of circumstances. Again, I do think he doesn't do himself many favors. He blocks, he tries to push other players, he doesn't necessarily he could probably play the ball a little bit more, but I find that the refereeing calls tend to be a bit excessive against him. It's the same, like I said, it's happened to Dasuki in the past where, he, at times where he actually did try to make an effort, he would still get called because it's just almost like a mindset. You just think as a ref, oh, it's Dasuki, this is a no-let. I don't care where the ball went, I don't care if it's mid-court and it's right through the player's, the line is through his opponent. It's Dasuki, it's a no-let, and this will teach him to not, call a let in that situation and play the ball. Yes, that's what you're going to get. No, I mean, you have to be consistent, but, going back to my previous point, it's very difficult with the referee's line of thinking to be that consistent, even within a match. So, I just feel that, the refs, they are trying to. It does help. Like Dasuki has gone better, but it's taken a number of years, and I don't necessarily think that it was deserved that it had to be years for Dasuki to kind of get to this level. I think the refs could recognize more objectively lets and strokes and no lets, but that's going to come in a future video. I think part of the problem is they lack the tools, but what tools those are, well, you'll find out soon. Stay tuned. So talking about the finals, both are 3-0s, so they're not ultra competitive either one, but definitely I was only disappointed with the men's. With the women's, honestly, I have no idea what Gohar could have done. Sherbini, the combination of having a very good hold on your volley drives and always being able to place them perfectly to the back or to the front when you want to. How do you, I would honestly love comments. Tell me what you're supposed to do against that, because you try to mix it up. You try to throw the ball, in different angles. And Sherbini's weak in the front corners if you're able to hit them accurately. But at the start of a rally, if she's already hitting her back corners perfectly, how do you instigate? How do you get to the front? And then if you make one wrong move, she's back. Again, if you're not accurate and she has time on the ball at the front, she's good at anticipating. So if she has time, she's just going to put reverse pressure on you. So this was simply a situation of one of the greatest players of all time playing, GOAT squash, greatest of all time squash. This is her at her finest. She has really cut down on her short game, going to the front too often, I should say. And she's just pushing her opponents back and then finishing them so easily. I don't have a strategy. I don't know if there is a very good strategy to combat that without being that high quality. So, Gohar gave it her best. She did play the way Gohar did. I mean, I don't think her standard went down at all. So, nothing she could have done. I really feel maybe use height a bit more, but Sherbini's so good. Like high up in the volley, she's stretched out and she can still punch that ball cross court or to link drive so easily. So, it's something I want to think about and just figure out, how exactly do you deconstruct the Sherbini game and kind of break it somehow. But nope, not for this tournament. And she's definitely set herself up for the next few tournaments. I don't think there's really any viable threats. Hania still could be there because just her pure retrieving, combined with the fact that she does have a little bit better finishing, say compared to like a Serm, should make it that in a year or two, maybe next season, Hania will develop enough of a, how do you say, I think she can, recognize to maybe be more aggressive and move Sherbini a bit more, have that confidence to do it for next season, but I don't see it happening before in the next few months. It's just not, it's something she'll have to work on. But anyway, Sherbini, top player right now, no one's even close. So on the other final, now I think Shorbagy played really well. Don't get me wrong. I think he played a perfect strategy. What he did was, and this is something I want to do in an analysis video for Paul Cole, is he slowballed Cole. Now, Cole tends to like to just float the ball back, hits decent medium pace drives to the back, and really just, basically wait for an opportunity, right? Just as soon as the opponent tries to increase the pace, goes for an attacking shot to the front, that's where Cole just steps up, moves to the front, moves higher onto the tee, and exerts pressure. And I find that with a lot of players, they tend to respond to Cole, or at least their mindset against Cole is, I've got to take my chances, I've got to attack him because I won't be able to keep up physically with him. So a lot of the strategy, at least it appears to me, is, as soon as he hits a loose one, go for it. And then keep going for it and keep the pressure up. I don't think this is the right strategy at all. What both Shorbagy brothers do, and even to an extent Asal do very well, is that they kind of just wait and they throw into the odd attack, but then they reset right away. They don't necessarily press the advantage, so to speak, too often, because they know that as soon as you go to the front once, Cole's already is already in that general vicinity. You're not going to want to attack him again there, otherwise he'll be right on top of the ball. Paul's really good at going deep into the corners and counter dropping. So what you want to do is actually just try to lull him a little bit. If he's going to go medium pace, or if he's going to go medium strong, you go medium slow. You don't give him any pace to work off of. What Marwan does especially well, and Muhammad is doing it as well, but especially when the ball goes to the front corners, or say the front half of the court, you go for a bit of a hold and drive back. And Gawad was doing this. His first game, if Gawad wasn't injured, I really felt that he would have taken that match. He played he almost didn't slow ball enough, but Gawad was playing so well against Cole. He was very patient, slow pace, went higher on the front wall, brought it back first, and then basically would throw in a very quick boast. And as soon as Cole would retrieve it, I was like, okay, reset. I'm just going to throw it to the back, and Cole's going to think, okay, just have to keep playing this. And then all of a sudden, 2 or 3 shots later, another attack. And they would be infrequent enough that Cole wouldn't be able to necessarily anticipate it. But over time, it would, it eats into the legs. It works well against Macon, as in addition. But I find, especially with Cole, he really doesn't like the slow pace. He cannot generate his own pace into attacking shots. So my problem with that match was, I'm very surprised Cole didn't come up with a game plan to counteract that. And I don't know if he has one that he can use on the go, but, Rob Owen, his coach, should know that, okay, his brother does it. He goes into a slow ball phase, just chips, and lets Cole just go back into retrieving mode. And what the brilliance of that strategy is that because it's such a slow pace, and Cole isn't like a Dasuki, he's not going to try to re-attack off of a slow ball shot that often. It's actually not very physically strenuous. That's why Omar Moussad has actually had pretty good luck against Cole. He has beaten him in 2017 U.S. Open, I believe. And he should have beat him at the 2019 World Championships. That was a 5-gamer, and he was able to last. A big guy like Moussad. And part of it is because Moussad, being a big guy, he knows he needs to reset more. But Moussad was just able to keep him to the back and just didn't expend that much energy. And this is the same thing Shorbagy did, except Shorbagy did it with great finishing. I think as soon as Shorbagy did those chip shots and Cole was starting to feel a little tired or was feeling nervous, it looked a lot more like nerves most of the time. Shorbagy was just able to take those slow balls and just finish them. He hit some brilliant cross-court nicks, and especially on a bouncy court, he knew to hit them a lot more softly, so they kind of tucked into the corner a lot more. It was just absolutely brilliant from him, but I'm just surprised that Cole didn't have a counter strategy to that. You can go for faster pace. You can try to mix up, go for more cross courts, and then if you try to increase the pace, then Shorbagy likes that. If you try to increase the pace, then you have a better chance of lulling Shorbagy into that attacking game, and then you might be able to reset to a slower pace, and maybe Shorbagy doesn't adjust. But I didn't feel like there was any change in pace from Cole, so. I mean, that's just one suggestion for a strategy. I don't know what the best one would be to counteract that, but I don't think Cole just anticipated that. And to me, it's disappointing because, it wasn't I mean, obviously I predicted Cole to win that, so disappointing for me, but it's also disappointing because this was Cole's best chance to win a major, bar none. He had such an easy draw, like compared to anything else he would have ever had. Going through Gawad, who everyone knew was not going to be 100% for that match. Even that whole side of the draw, Miguel is totally overranked. He shouldn't, he's world number 8, but I don't think he's on the downswing to me. There just wasn't like the same quality as there was on the other side. Plus, he didn't have to face Farragut, wasn't even in the tournament. So really, there was no. I felt there was no excuses for him. He was coming into that match way fresher than Muhammad was, so he could have actually sacrificed a lot of his own endurance to try to get Muhammad a lot more exhausted. He's 30. You have a shot at that. You're the most physically fit player in the world, maybe with Macon, but he squandered a big opportunity. So anyway, that hopefully that bodes well for him in a future event. I don't see him winning the World Championships because 6 rounds is a little tough. More or less, it just comes down to whether or not he can get through his early rounds quickly. And again, depends on some matchups. But I think this was his best opportunity. But getting back to Shorbagy, I said for El Sherbini, she's the best. I don't think there's any equivocating that. There's no one really there to threaten her, especially after the retirement of Wawulivi. And again, Hamami, some other players coming up, they're not there yet. Gohar, it's been a bad matchup for years. Sobi has actually a decent game. They do good record, but I think that part of the reason why I'm not very hopeful on Sobi is just because what the improvements that Sherbini's made to her game specifically hurt Sobi a lot. So for me, Sherbini number one, no question. Now the problem with Shorbagy in this event, I don't want to say he had an easy draw either. He really didn't. But you kind of have to look at his rounds as well, and like you gotta look at the kind of players he played and where he has to go from here. So he had his match against Masadi, which was tough, and he didn't get through that completely unscathed, but it was good. Macon, problem I have with the Macon matchup is it's kind of like with Cole. He's a physical player. He knows how to play them. I had said that in the last tournament where they played, and I was surprised that Shorbagy lost, but it might have just been rust. But they know each other very well. Shorbagy plays them all the time, and yet Shorbagy still only, it still takes 5 games for him to beat him. I think at the last England Challenge event or matches, it was another 5-gamer. So Shorbagy's having a harder and harder time getting through some of these opponents very quickly. Like, he used to slice through butter, 3-0, 3-0, 3-0. It's not happening as much anymore, and I don't know if it will. The other thing about this is that there's a lot of players in the men's event that weren't here that are still threats to him, and it's that he didn't have to face. I still am not sure if he beats Marwan. I'm not sure if he beats Elias consistently, although Elias with his injury might we'll have to see how he recovers. But Asal, Farag, there's still a bit of a fight at the top. I mean, Momin's still there, but he's older. I think Shorbagy and him they know what each other does. I don't think there's any really changing much in that matchup. So I'll still say Shorbagy has that, but again, this tournament he had more preferable matchups. So I don't put him as a favorite, say, for the World Championship, whereas I would put Sherbini as a definite favorite. I would still say Farag is my number one going into that event. And maybe we'll have to see what the draw breaks down to, but I also would see Asal as a legit contender. That match against Dasuki was tough. It was reffed. Again, the reffing was rough against him at some points. It was rough for both players, and I don't think it was anyone's fault particularly, but yeah, it was not, Asal, it comes back, he always comes back really strong. I still think Macon needs to start winning matches a little bit faster. It's going to be hard to win a 6-round tournament. So, but in any case, I'm not ready yet to say Shorbagy's at his peak. He needs to show me that he can beat some of the higher paced players on their day. And, he did get through Dasuki, but I think that, even an Albogar is going to be a tough match for him. So yeah, that, again, it wasn't the best tournament. I definitely think that they could make some improvements when they're coming with their protocols, just to wrap it up. But I was really happy Shorbagy was able to come back, still prove that he can win these majors. A little disappointed in Cole. And, I'm just really looking forward to the next couple months, definitely with COVID protocols easing. It looks like we should have a fairly normal next season, hopefully. And, this was great. Otherwise, like I was really happy that they actually had all the match. They basically had every match on the side courts posted. I watched a lot of them, most of them when I could, and I was really impressed that other than the humidity issue, I actually thought the venue was gorgeous. They did a fantastic job with it. So yeah, that's it. That was my thoughts on El Gouna. I do plan on doing. We'll see what the next event exactly is. I'm definitely going to do one for the Worlds. I'll see what's next if it's the World Series. But either way, I'm really looking forward to joining you guys again for some more predictions. Going to try to do that Paul Cole analysis video, and I got some more thoughts on referees because who doesn't love referees, right? Anyway, thanks for joining me. Click the link to subscribe. And yeah, like the video if you want. Comment as well. Thanks. Have a good night. Take care. Bye.